In today's day and age, if a business has to thrive, then we also need to make sure that the ecosystem supports it. That is the secret sauce that makes Android successful, Apple successful, and the Windows operating system successful. Similarly, in the euro-dollar world, if there is a simple shipment, say worth millions of dollars, from India, let us say it is going to land in South Africa. This actually triggers a lot of businesses in the ecosystem where each and every business makes money. And it is in the rental business. Let us assume that you want to enter into a rental business in a touristy location. What would you do? You would probably sign up for a long-term lease on certain apartments and then leave out these apartments as short-term leases for the various tourists. You might also lease out the furnitures which are there as well as some vehicles as rentals. So if you notice that in this entire process, everybody is making money and the customer is also happy. How is it that a euro-dollar transaction of shipment worth millions of dollars from India to South Africa be equivalent to that of rental business? Stay tuned.
Today, we're diving deep into the hidden financial plumbing that makes the world go around. We're going to look at this invisible engine that funds global trade with dollars that, well, don't really exist yet.
So think about it for a second. When a giant shipment of goods moves from one country to another, the money has to move just as fast. But how on earth does $10 million just appear instantly to make a deal happen, when the actual payment might not come through for months? That's the big mystery we're unpacking today. And to get our heads around this, we're going to follow a single trade. It looks simple on the surface, but it actually reveals a massive, hidden problem right at the heart of global finance. Okay, let's set the scene. You've got an Indian company, and they ship $10 million worth of goods to a buyer way over in South Africa. The deal is done, the invoice gets sent. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, for the banks involved, it's anything but. See, here's the catch. The Indian bank, it's already paid its local exporter in Indian rupees, because that exporter needs the cash to keep their business running. But now, on the bank's books, there's an IOU, a receivable, that's going to get paid in US dollars, maybe in 30, 60, or even 90 days. So you've got this huge mismatch in both time and currency. And this is what's so important to understand. The bank isn't sitting there wondering if the trade is legitimate. They know it's a real deal. The urgent, pressing question, the one that keeps them up at night, is purely mechanical. Where do I get 10 million US dollars right now to plug this hole in my books? And that really gets to the heart of the problem. You see, the Indian bank's vaults are filled with customer deposits in rupees, but the language of global trade, that's the US dollar. They can't just wish their rupees into dollars. They need actual US dollars, and they need them now. So, if the local bank is completely stuck, who steps in to solve this seemingly impossible problem? Well, this is where we meet the silent backbone of the entire global financial system. But before I tell you who it is, let's be really clear about who it isn't. The Indian bank can't just pick up the phone and call the US Federal Reserve for a loan. It just doesn't have that kind of access. It definitely can't print its own dollars. And just waiting around for 90 days for the payment? No way. That's not an option. That would bring their whole operation to a grinding halt. The solution comes from a very special kind of institution, a primary dealer. Now, these are the elite global banks, the big players. They have a special license to deal directly in US government debt, and they operate at the absolute center of the world's money markets. Honestly, the best way to picture them is like this. They are the global wholesalers of dollars. You know, just like a wholesaler supplies goods to all the retail stores, these dealers supply the most essential product in the world, US dollars, to all the other banks. And they are all business. They don't care why the Indian bank needs dollars. They're not asking about the goods being shipped. Nope. Their only questions are, what high-quality collateral you got? How long do you need the cash for? And what rate are you going to pay me? It's all plumbing, no philosophy. Okay, so we've met the players. We know who provides the dollars. But the big question remains, how do they actually do it? Let's break down how this deal really works. It all happens in 3 key steps. First, the Indian bank puts up some top-tier collateral, usually something like US Treasury bonds.
Second, the primary dealer lends the US dollars against that collateral for, say, 90 days through what's called a repo transaction. And third, and this is the magic part, the dealer just expands its own balance sheet to create that dollar loan literally out of thin air. And this is the part that might bend your brain a little. Get this. No pot of saved dollars is being moved from one account to another. The primary dealer isn't taking someone else's savings to lend out. It is creating the liquidity on the spot by expanding its own books, knowing that the whole thing will just reverse itself down the road. This ability to just create dollar liquidity on demand is what makes the whole system tick. But why does this magic trick only really work with the US dollar? Well, let's take a look at the secret sauce. So why are these dealers so willing to say yes? 3 big reasons. First, the collateral. US Treasuries, they're considered the safest asset on planet Earth. They're like gold, accepted everywhere. Second, the dealer can immediately turn around and reuse that same collateral for its own funding needs. And third, the markets for borrowing and lending US dollars are just massive, incredibly deep, and they never sleep. They operate 24/7 all around the globe. And when you compare the US dollar system to others, the difference is just stark. The dollar system has this globally accepted collateral. It has these deep 24/7 funding markets, and crucially, it has dealers who are willing to take on this temporary risk. For other currencies, the collateral isn't globally accepted, the markets aren't deep enough, and so you just don't find dealers willing to play this game. And here's a really cool way to think about what the dealer is actually financing. They're not really funding the shipment of machinery or whatever is in those boxes. They are financing the big, abstract concepts that make trade possible. They're financing time, that gap between shipment and payment. They're financing trust, the belief that the payment will show up. And they're financing risk, the chance that it won't. All of this, the entire thing, happens behind the scenes. It's the vast, invisible plumbing that connects the entire global economy, making sure the water, or in this case the dollars, gets exactly where it needs to go, when it needs to be there. And here's why it's so invisible. Once those 90 days are up, the South African buyer pays up. The US dollars flow back to the primary dealer, the repo loan gets closed out, the collateral is returned, and poof, both banks' balance sheets shrink right back to their original size. It's so seamless, it's like it almost never happened. But make no mistake, if this invisible plumbing ever got clogged or broke down, oh man, the consequences would be catastrophic. Exporters would have to demand all their payment up front, which most buyers can't do. Global trade would just seize up. The prices for, well, everything you buy would skyrocket. And smaller businesses, they'd be completely locked out of the global market. So, if you take one thing away from all this, it should be this. Primary dealers are not just big banks. That doesn't even begin to cover it. They are a core piece of global infrastructure. They are the world's shock absorbers for time and trust. And ultimately, that right there, that is the true hardwired source of the US dollar's power. It isn't just about the size of the US economy. It's this unique, mechanical ability of its financial system for dealers to say yes immediately and worry about cleaning up the balance sheet later. No other currency on Earth has that power. So let's start with a simple question. Who really gets paid when a container ship crosses an ocean? You might think, well, it's just the company that made the product and the company that bought it, right? But the real answer? Oh, it's way more interesting than that. See, when the goods move, the money has to move too. And there's this whole chain of financial players that all take a little piece of the action. So let's follow the money and see where it really goes. Okay, our first stop is the most obvious player in this whole story, the exporter's local bank right there in India. They're the ones on the ground, they know the client, and they're helping get this deal done. But how exactly do they make their money from it? Well, here's their main source of income, by far. The exporter in India, they need cash now. They can't wait the 75 days it'll take for the machinery to get to South Africa and for them to get paid. So the bank steps in and gives them an advance, about $9.5 million. For lending out that money, they charge interest. And over that 75-day period, that nets them a cool $135,000. All right, next up, currency exchange. This entire deal is priced in US dollars, but our exporter in India needs rupees to pay their workers and suppliers. The bank handles that conversion. And in the process, they take a tiny, tiny fraction of a percentage for themselves. That's called the spread. Now, it's a small margin for sure, but on 10 million bucks, it adds up to a very nice $30,000. And finally, you've got the boring but incredibly reliable income from just fees. You have no idea the mountain of paperwork, compliance checks, and secure messages that goes into international trade. The bank charges for handling every single piece of it, and that adds another $15,000 to their bottom line. So let's put it all together. The bank brings in about $180,000 in gross income from the interest, the currency exchange, and all those fees. Now, of course, they had to get those US dollars from somewhere, and that wasn't free. That cost them about $110,000. So you subtract that funding cost, and the Indian bank walks away with a net profit of around $70,000 on just one transaction. Now, here's the thing you gotta understand. This isn't some risky, speculative Wall Street bet. This is the definition of bread and butter banking. The risk of the deal going bad is super low, it's for a very short period of time, and they do this thousands of times a year. It's safe, it's steady, but it's not the whole story. Not even close. Because that local bank, they're just the first link in the chain. Now we're going to move up the food chain, go behind the curtain to a much bigger, much less visible player who operates on a truly global scale. Their whole game is about volume. See, the dealer is the one who provides the US dollars that the Indian bank needs, and they charge a tiny margin for it, let's say 30 basis points, which is just a fancy way of saying 0.3%. On our $10 million deal, that's about 50 grand. It doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But you have to imagine that multiplied by thousands of trades with hundreds of banks every single day. It becomes a massive, predictable river of cash. But here's their secret weapon. This is the hidden edge. When the Indian bank borrows those dollars, it has to put up some really safe collateral, like US Treasury bonds. Now here's the magic trick. The dealer can take that same collateral and use it again to back another loan to someone else. It's brilliant. Think of it like a valet at a fancy restaurant who uses the same prime parking spot for dozens of different cars all day, collecting a fee from each one. That's exactly what the dealer is doing, and it dramatically boosts their returns. And this is why their balance sheets aren't just seen as assets, they're seen as critical infrastructure for the global economy, especially during a financial crisis. When everyone else is panicking and credit is frozen solid, these dealers can still operate. They get to pick and choose who they do business with, and they can charge much wider spreads, making huge profits, precisely when the demand for dollars is at its absolute peak. They make a fortune by being the only game in town. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so is the big global dealer just taking advantage of the smaller local bank? And the answer is no, not at all. This is actually a deeply symbiotic system. It's a relationship where both sides are getting exactly what they need out of the deal. Let me show you why this is a win-win. Okay, look at it from the Indian bank's perspective. They solve their exporters' problem by getting them cash fast. They earn reliable fees and spreads, and most importantly, they get to offload the tricky and risky job of sourcing US dollars to someone else. Now, what about the primary dealer? Well, they get to put their massive balance sheet to work, earn a very safe, low-risk profit, and in return, they receive pristine, ultra-safe collateral. It's a perfect match. So, we've met the players, we've seen how they all make their money, but there's a fundamental principle, one core idea that ties this whole system together. And once you see it, everything about how global commerce really works just clicks into place. So after all that, after following the money from India to the global markets and back, what's really going on here? What is the core concept that powers this entire financial chain? What is really being bought and sold? And here it is. This is the crucial point. The entire system isn't funded by some giant pool of savings sitting in a bank vault somewhere. No, global trade actually runs on a series of short-term rentals. Everybody is renting something from somebody else. Just think about it. Let's trace it back. The exporter is basically renting time, using financing to bridge the gap until they get paid. The local Indian bank is renting US dollars to be able to provide that financing. And the global dealer? They are renting out their massive balance sheet to the bank. It's a chain of rentals, from the top all the way to the bottom. And this is what finally brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Why the US dollar? Why is it at the center of everything? It's because the dollar has the deepest, most efficient, and most liquid rental market on the entire planet. When you need to rent financial capacity for a few days or a few weeks, the dollar market is really the only one with the scale to make it all happen smoothly.